Hey everybody, Jonathan Broadbent here. It is Wednesday, December 7th, and boy, do I have a bunch of great news to share with you. So, this is another exciting episode of UnWoke.Academy. I'm your host, Jonathan Broadbent, and so before I jump into the main topic du jour, I've got some housekeeping notes, a few things to share with you. One is you may have seen that interview I did a few days ago with Dan Geller. Dan is an experienced guru in the world of charities and nonprofits, and he got me thinking that it's not just the for-profit side of the world of finance that's gone wokadoodle. We've got it in groves all over the nonprofit world as well. So, and I think that this is just my sort of outside observation, but I think that at the higher levels, when I look anecdotally at the big ultra mega nonprofits, and who knows, there's like billions of dollars that they just rake in each year, and we keep hearing it seems like every but 3 or 5 years or something, there's some story breaks about how one of them has been embezzling money or taking $1 million extra bonus on top of their salary and wages, and how the executives are all making vast fortunes, or they only like 30% of the money actually goes toward the cause, or just bad stuff. So it got me thinking, and I went and got another website domain. I didn't even know .charity existed, but it does. And so now I own UnWoke.charity. And so I'm bouncing some ideas around. Dan's not the only person that I know in the nonprofit realm, but I'm hoping to collaborate. And who knows, in the future, maybe we can add to our roster some conversation about wokadoodle left influence on nonprofits. Because at the end of the day, there are, just like finance in healthcare and schools and all these things, that we find the tentacles spreading of the far left globalist woke, whatever you want to call it, the bad guys. There are of course good guys as well. They're good people. Oh gosh, I just had that flash thought for a moment there of like, oh, the left are going to attack me because I said guys, and that's like gender. It's not gender neutral, whatever. I got to stop even trying to think of the leftists, because they're going to start going crazy. Um, so anyway, I bought unwoke.charity, but there's also, before that, I've been working on something in collaboration with another group that's unwoke investing. So, or unwoke investments, excuse me, unwoke investing is what I started with, to talk about these issues and what I see in my experiences, and put some daylight on the wokadoodle left influence and tentacles all throughout banking and finance, etc. That became unwoke.academy, where it's just open conversation about all things woke left, and how to avoid it and have a better life, full of freedom and liberty and autonomy and peace and unity with all people, and all the lovely, wonderful things that the left say they want and then fight tooth and nail. But so unwoke investments, wasn't me, it was a group of other people that I'm partnering with, landed on that. And I mean, my view is, what is the expression? Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Easy for me to say. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Well, I'm flattered. They went and got unwoke investments, and the plan is to build a vehicle through which we can fund uh, liberty-minded businesses. And so, while I do control the unwoke, kind of the image of that and what it means, because I don't want it misused and abused, the idea is everything I'm talking about here should be global. Everyone everywhere should be working on this stuff. But the plan is, I mean, as we look at the globalist big mega banks and their handlers, these billionaire families that control all this stuff and manipulate currency exchanges, finance, financial markets, credit and lending, banking. They really would love to have control over all of it, 100%. Have the entire world locked down, and these like, I don't even know, I'm guessing like 6 or 10 families or whatever that are all billionaires want to become trillionaires and control everything in the world. Well, most people don't really like that idea. So we're fighting back, and that's what UnWoke is all about. But the thing is, we're seeing it already all over the United States and Europe, parts of Europe. Small regional banks are closing, and that, I argue, is by design. Eventually, the plan is to get to just a handful of global banks, like maybe pretend like there are 4 of them, and those 4 probably would be co-owned by the same 6 or 10 families or whatever. So we would have this impression that we would have 4 or 6 banks or something to choose from in the world. Hoorah! Rather than work with a local bank. But then, in addition to them just controlling all the money and currency and exchange rates and interest rates, they can then attach all kinds of stuff like the corporate equity index, which is the social credit score system for businesses. And then they can run small businesses even further out of business. Well, we want the opposite. What we, the people, want globally is a lot more small business, a lot more money and business and enterprise in the hands of individuals and families, mom and pop shops everywhere. That's what UnWoke Investments is slated to be. Stay tuned for more on that. We're working on it. We're cultivating all kinds of things as we speak. A note on an amazing, super, super cool conversation that I had today. So I've mentioned before that I'm spending a lot of time. I've been making phone calls for 2 years all around trying to find other unwoke people that work in finance. And so every once in a while, I'll get somebody on the line who's like, nope, I don't want to talk to you. I'm like, okay, I wish you a great day. Thanks for taking my call. I respect and honor whatever position you have. And then I actually do interject. I don't think there is such a thing as too far left that you can't invest in. If anyone believes in that, first of all, I encourage anybody to understand whatever they are invested in. And I think that they're going to fall into a gray box if they start trying to look at ESG, because it doesn't actually exist. It's just nonsense, smoke and mirrors. But that shouldn't stop anybody from investing however they want. But I draw the line at trying to manipulate people into it and funnel money through like setting up 401k plans that are loaded with ESG centric stuff. And then people like me get in and your head spins trying to actually define and ascertain the value of those investments, because it's just nonsense. And you just run around in circles chasing your tail, trying to determine the relevance of the term ESG. It's like a house of mirrors. But anyway, I do get a great number of phone calls that I venture into with other people all across finance, all the different niches and nuances of the world of finance, who get on the phone with me and hear me talk, and they're like, oh my gosh, it's such a breath of fresh air to be able to talk to somebody who's not woke. And I'm telling you, across the board at these big firms, it's already a pressure cooker. It's already an environment where there is just such tremendous browbeating to get sales numbers and what's called production and production credits and all this stuff. Just constantly be selling the stuff of that firm and driving up profit. It's just this machine that's like a hamster wheel that you're on. And it's already tough, and it's already a difficult environment. And now when the ESG woke left stuff is all introduced and CBDC, it's dictated. Actually pretty much everything is dictated from the top down, and you have to follow orders. And now anybody in that sort of environment in the world of finance who maybe doesn't agree, and I think it's a lot, they can't they can't be found out, and they know, they sense they'll immediately get probably canned. They won't get the appointments. They won't get the client accounts. They won't get the referrals. They won't get the cross referrals from other divisions. All of that stuff. It's top-down tyrannical control. It always was, but now it's worse. But then they get on the phone with me, and some of these people are just like, "Oh my gosh, it's just so good to know that I'm not alone." I love those conversations, but I got into one today totally by accident. I got an email from a firm I hadn't heard of before, and I've got my radar on for the smaller managers, because it's the smaller ones that are not the big multi-globalist owned by the same six families and whatever, that can actually afford to do good things and can actually look at the value of the investments that they're going into for their clients. And those firms are the ones that I want to talk to the most. I got this invitation. The funny thing is, I got this invitation. It didn't have a phone number in the email. And it was an invitation to a lunch and learn about one of their offerings. I was like, well, I don't know. Could be good. Could be anything. But I went on the web and did a search, and I found a phone number and called it. And I started talking to whoever it was, the person that answered the phone. And I always start off neutral. And I said, I'd like to know more about your firm's stance on things like ESG. And we had a little bit of conversation, and that person said, I think that our COO would be better suited to answer your questions. I was like, wow. All right, then. Maybe I get to speak to the COO of this company. And I did. That's pretty cool and pretty surprising, and it was pretty darn awesome. I got through to the COO, and at first it was a little standoffish and seemed a little gruff, and I don't blame him. I'm just this voice from nowhere, calling out of the blue. But it turned out we are totally on the same page. And it was funny because early on, as I'm asking these questions about their company's positions on the ESG and all this stuff, this person was just like, well, I'm going to tell you that I have arrived at that point in life where I'm not going to self-censor, and I'm going to let you know that there are some political opinions here, and I'm going to express them. I said, good. I'd have it no other way, and you can expect the same from me. And I'm gearing up for my usual conversation about how ESG is just a bunch of smoke and mirrors and nonsense, and it's gobbledygook. It's virtue signaling at best, and it just allows a bunch of firms to cherry pick and subjectively pick and control the winners and losers. I didn't have to say it. This guy, he knew it all. He was telling me. So I just sat back and listened. I had a big ear-to-ear smile on my face. The upshot is, stay tuned, because we ended up connecting. We've exchanged email, and I've introduced UnWoke, and I'm really hoping to get this person on a webcast. I'm going to be working on making sure that everything is super buttoned up with all the incognito mode. This will be our first really good true test of it, to put somebody on screen and just prepare yourself, just like those interviews with whistleblowers and stuff similar to that. I have software that distorts the voice and blurs the face, because like anybody else in the world of finance, this person can't afford to be outed, or there's no telling the backlash from the extremist left that will go hog wild trying to damage the career and all that stuff. And I won't let that happen, because I want to protect anybody like that who has a good and decent mind in their brain, in their head, and is actually out there doing the right things in the world of finance. So stay tuned. I really hope that we're able to land that interview, which brings me to the main crux of today's podcast, and that is news. I'm going to preface this in this way. Warfare changes. I know it's a weird lead in, but follow me on this. Through the years, we used to have people that would meet up in lines on a battlefield and they had like swords and axes and they would like hack and chop at each other and they had shields and everything. And then it turned into muskets and people would like line up and go out and they would march and they would line up and shoot each other with muskets. And then after that, there became like all this evolution of warfare. It's guerrilla warfare, and then people like dressing like civilians and then attacking in small groups and bands, and warfare evolves. And where we are now is something called it's often referred to as fifth generation warfare. And so there's you can look up some things like the two generals or how to defeat America without firing a single shot. It's basically the concept is that our enemies throw everything at us except kinetic warfare, which is bombs and bullets, in the hopes of weakening us enough that they can then come in and launch a more traditional attack of bombs and bullets and stuff. Ideally, part of what they want to happen is to create an environment for civil war. So I make the argument that right now we are in not only World War III, as apparent by the fact that there are lots of warring countries all over the world, and many countries are involved in those fights, including the United States, but also we have all these picked at divisions within the United States, and the racial divide has been picked at for forever, pretty much, but in earnest by our enemies for at least 60 years. It's perceived to be our weakest fracture point in the US, trying to divide black and white and get us to fight each other. And if we're fighting each other, then we're distracted and weak, and then our enemies come and attack. I don't think that was happening to the satisfaction of our enemies. So we now have new elements. There's certainly the gender thing has been around forever, creating the idea of overly aggressive, violent men who just oppress women. Because in this environment, in order to divide and conquer and create that division, you need to have an oppressed and oppressor. It's the basic building block. So white and black isn't really working. Male and female isn't really working. And so the latest addition to that is LGBTQ plus. So it creates the concept that people were not free to express their own individuality and sexuality, which is blatantly false and ridiculous. And at its face, nobody actually believes it. There are some examples of people that had coming out parties, of course, that were not wonderful, or they had parents that opposed it, but those are actually not all that common. So it's not a matter of truth in any of those divide and conquer. It's a matter of creating the impression of oppression, and then having an enemy to blame, and then focusing all the media and social media on all that stuff. But so we're in an environment now where you can hear the crackling. I've mentioned in the past, so we have a weekly subscription to the actual paper copy of the Epoch Times. Some people say Epic Times, some people say Epoch. I think it's a wonderful newspaper, and they actually do this crazy thing of tackling news stories and writing them well. It's so refreshing. So where we are now is the same place that's kind of existed for the several wars now, including World War I and World War II and Korea and Vietnam and whatever. Anywhere there's major conflict, you want to control the narrative. You want to make, among other things, and probably first and foremost, you want to make your enemy feel hopeless. You want to create the impression that there's no sense in fighting back because they can't possibly win. That's what's happening now with patriots of the United States and the West. European, you get all over EU. It's like this bleak hopelessness that's sort of fomented. Well, here's the problem with trying to create that narrative. And I'm going to use a little aside to illustrate the point. A lot of people don't know this, but part of what brought down the Berlin Wall was the invention of the fax machine. Prior to the fax machine, the Stasi, who are the East Berlin police, controlled everything. They had microphones and listening devices, and all the phone lines, the wires, the communications were all tapped and everything. And so you couldn't really communicate with people until you couldn't like organize or learn the real news or what's separate fact from fiction and all that stuff. The fax machine came along and it allowed people to find truth. And that is what set them free, quite literally. Fax machine. Look it up. It's cool history. So as the left tries to crack down, they hate newspapers that are willing to discuss actual newsworthy items like Epoch Times and Twitter. By the way, as an aside, look online. You'll see UnWoke has been tracking those horrible, treacherous companies that are pulling ad dollars from Twitter, now X, because of their willingness to allow free speech. The reason that all is happening in the lawsuits against Elon Musk is because we have a election coming up, an election month with a counting week, unless we fix it before then. And so the last thing that the globalist, Marxist, social communist left want is a whole bunch of people speaking freely. Speaking of which, there's a great article here. It's one of many out there. Look around. You're not going to see them on mainstream media, but look around the country. In the US, you're seeing lawsuits, and many are winning against the voting apparatus that exists in the United States. Our infrastructure is really, really messed up, and we're working to try and fix it. The leftist media, politicians and everything, they're not covering it. This one, in Bridgeport, Connecticut, that's a key starting point. Look up the lawsuit recently on election fraud in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And you've got tons of them. DeKalb, Georgia, it's fascinating. You got Arizona and their attorney general, and the Maricopa County, and then what's the other one? Mohican. I'm drawing a blank. There's another big county there that just had a big dust up. Awesome stuff. Follow those things. This one is 15-minute cities are enslavement of all people, EU lawmaker says. So even the environmentalists, the environmental oppressors, we're going to just call them, the 15-minute city concept, this climate action takeover strategy of using fear to get people to give up all their rights and liberties and freedoms. It's nonsense. And we, the people, are fighting back, and we're winning against this terrible, treacherous intent on tyranny. That's what UnWoke is here for. So whether it's UnWoke on whatever social media platform you're on the videos, if it's UnWoke.Academy, that's going to be the main focal point for all this stuff, or any of these new things that we're building and developing, like taking a look at the world of charity and nonprofits. It all comes down to us, my friends. Thanks for listening. Stay unwoke. Keep watching. Alert other people. Let's spread the word and fight back against these wokeadoodle left. I'm Jonathan Broadbent. I'm your host of UnWoke.Academy. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for the next exciting episode.